a relationship for it to move forward?
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's been the victim,
right,
or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
With regards to this whole Venezuelan-US story, that first of all, to some extent, some of the engagement that I've had, I have not gotten on other topics. The only other situation that had a similar level of unique engagements was with regards to the Paria tragedy, where through different channels that are not the norm, various individuals reached out to either have a conversation via text or what have you, to give perspectives, to share information, to potentially say where they think I'm wrong, and so on and so on. And similar stuff has happened with this US-Venezuela situation. I wouldn't call it a crisis yet. To some extent, I actually was wondering every time I bring it up, you know, is the public fed up of the story? Do they want to move on? Should we move on? That's always a question, you know. At what point is it appropriate to move on and not appropriate to stay on the story, which is very subjective. But one of the things with regard to this situation is, given how unprecedented it is, and also not just that it's unprecedented, it's also the latest action, military action by the United States government, which to some extent, maybe if this was 2012, 2016, 2009, 2008, 2006, it might not seem as dramatic as it is now, but given the fact that the global war on terror is, on a practical level, essentially over. And the United States isn't necessarily conducting any active military operations. This kind of gets the focus, in part because there are tensions in other parts of the world. And what most Trinidadians are not necessarily concerned with, but what Southeast Asia is concerned with, or Ukraine, or Israel, or Palestine, etc., is to see how far is Trump willing to go on an issue. Because when the time comes, they might want him to go that far on their issue. Now, I don't know if he would necessarily support Israel over Palestine or be more neutral than either side would like. But Southeast Asia doesn't want a president who's going to be isolationist. They want a president who's going to be willing to act in case hostilities kick off in that part of the world. A lot of those nations depend on the defense guarantee, the backing, the support of the United States, similar to us. But while you are looking to see what the United States are willing to do, too many people are declaring prematurely what they know, quote unquote, America is doing or will do, and why they're doing it. They know this because they read some history books, and thus they know. Yes, it is true, history has a tendency to repeat itself, and patterns of behavior could be derived from history. The problem is it's always tricky to derive patterns of behavior when you're dealing with a democratic system of government that flip-flops between parties and changes personnel every 4 to 8 years. The Democrats of today would not be the Democrats of yesterday. And obviously, Trump is not a Republican of yesterday. Trump is a Democrat that took over the Republican Party because their whole political system has been turned upside down, which means that the motivations of why they do things are not exactly and entirely the same as it was in the 80s. The Soviet Union doesn't exist. A lot of factors have changed. They might make some of the same decisions, but not necessarily for the same reasons. And the outcomes are not guaranteed to be exactly the same. They might be similar. But the complexities of these things, generally speaking, is lost on most commentators, especially when they want to oversimplify and say, this is what's going to happen. You could get away with that in sports. People want controversial takes in sports, and at the end of the day, you know, in sports, commentators, analysts could get it wrong. But that's okay. It's more entertaining, and you get more engagement when you're willing to take an absolute position. But this isn't entertainment. This is real life. And this isn't just real life. This is one of the highest forms of consequence that we, for the most part, have seen in our lifetimes. We haven't reached global natural disasters yet. We haven't had the Armageddon scenario with the asteroid coming to impact us and all of that jazz. We haven't found life elsewhere in the universe who might be hostile or not. All of those things, that's for Hollywood. As of real life, war between our various societies, that's one of the highest levels of consequence we know. And to say that I am a YouTuber, an internet personality, and I know. Note, everything that I have said is about what I think can happen. I have never said, oh, the Americans are definitely here for regime change, or they're definitely here just to deal with the cartels. I have acknowledged that they say they're here for the cartels, and it might end up being that, but there's a very, very, very real possibility that they may end up conducting regime change. One of the main reasons why I say it like that is the truth could be that they start off going after the cartels and might end. They might pivot halfway and say, maybe we should regime change. The thing is, I've always said, if they were looking to escalate things further, they would be certain indicators. In theory, they could jump out of their skin and say we're going to invade, and invade within 24 hours and most of the world wouldn't have much of an advance notice. That is to say the general public. Any intelligence service monitoring the right things, they will see it coming once the decision is made. You can't invade with troops and just snap your fingers and you just appear. You have to get your people from point A to point B. Russia has people probably monitoring the situation. China has people probably monitoring the situation. Europe, Israel, probably even certain Latin American countries like Brazil have people monitoring the situation. In theory, America could snap its fingers and get the ball rolling and start escalation within 24 hours. That would be kind of risky. But the point is we would see more. You don't invade a country of 20 to 30 million people with 2,000 men. That's not a thing. There's a local criminologist. He had an interesting statement. Prime Minister may have been misled about U.S. strike. I won't say who the criminologist is, right? But it starts down the line of wanting to say what you believe is going to happen in, well, what you believe the United States motivation is, right? The criminologist said Prime Minister's statement was based on misleading information and amounted to endorsement of extrajudicial killing. All right. I mean, it could be extrajudicial killing, but we don't actually have evidence that it was misleading information. In fact, the basis of any assumption of extrajudicial killing, in part, would be based on the information that was provided. But I've also seen stuff on the internet where people are saying, hey, this is regime change. They're after the oil. They're doing this. They're doing that. We don't know. In fact, there's a very real possibility if the drug smugglers get scared off. After that one strike, they might just pause operations. It's not dissimilar to when the price of oil gets too low or the price of gold or diamonds get too low and certain operations stop because the profitability of extracting whatever they're extracting ceases. So they just mothball their operations and wait until the price goes back up. This is somewhat similar. They'll just stop, and then the American ships will just, go back and forth, and then at some point they have to return back to port. You can only keep sailors out at sea for so long, but it will take months. And then once they leave, the smugglers might start back up again. And that might be the end of it. That literally could be how it goes. One of the things that we need to understand is navies have deployed ships in similar manners for as long as navies have existed. It's not an automatic sign that they have to shoot their missiles and their guns because we're already here. We have to shoot. There's nothing that says that you have to shoot. But just as easily, America could get more aggressive. We don't know. There are reports that Venezuela had I don't know how accurate these reports are, how trustworthy these reports are. But I'll just address the fact that some people believe Venezuela flew F-16s over the American ships. I would say good luck with that, because theoretically those are 1980 models. We've already seen how similarly aged planes owned by Ukraine was not up to the task of defending them from the Russian Air Force. More importantly, if America wants regime change, you're kind of giving them the excuse. Hitting a pirogue that may have drug smugglers on it, that's not necessarily a Cassius bell that the rest of the world will be like, yes, you're right, America hit you first with that pirogue. More importantly, Venezuela doesn't really want a war. Armies of dictators, they tend to be geared towards defending the dictator from his own nation's population to keep him in power. Then Then the next mission in line is to defend the nation from external threats. To what extent, this is where we're going to see the potential real consequences of sanctions, the economic difficulties of maintaining a viable modern military force. Does Venezuela really want to fight, or are they just trying to bluster their way out of not fighting? But to say we know what the Americans will do, that anyone that says that they know, unless they have security clearances and probably are going to get fired from whatever job they have as a result, we don't know for sure. That's Trump style. And Trump style also includes pulling up. Just because he says he's going to do a thing doesn't mean he commits to it 100%, although one would think he is committing to Venezuela. So we have to wait and see. But the commentary out of this, most of the time when I talk, and this is what it seems like it separates me from at least people on the internet, I don't say what is, I say what can be. And then technically what the limitations are, I'll go into that. The limitations of certain things, the limitations of certain, whether the limitations of our police force based on what we've seen, the limitations of our justice system. I'll speak about those things. But to say, oh, this is what our police will do, this is what the Americans are going to do, this is what, no. Government has to say that we're not deploying our defense force after the US strike. Guys, what would we deploy our defense force to do even if we wanted to deploy them? That's all I'll say about that. Right? A couple other things to get to before we take the break. The former finance minister of the PNM warns of a $9 billion deficit. This is not Coleman, but this is Vishnu Danpal. To which I say, that's nice. That seemed to be the running deficit of the PNM's budget. So it's nice that you could admit that your deficit. Now, and that's the thing, he's warning of it, and he's saying it's the up-to-date assessments of revenue expenditure plans from when he was in the Ministry of Finance, that's a U budget. I don't know if this is necessarily something you should be bringing up to think that, oh my gosh, look at the issue that they have. Yes, technically speaking, although it is not as simple as this, and it's not necessarily fair to say this in its simplistic form and to take it literally, but technically speaking, that's a U problem. That's not a UNC problem. With regards to cause, it's a UNC problem in the fact that now that they won the election, they have to try and solve it. So it never ceases to amaze me how the opposition loves to throw out, look at this bad situation. How are they going to deal with that? They can't deal with it. It's like, yes, but you technically were the ones in power when it was created. So throwing shade on them for it is not really effective. There was, I think one of the things that Mr. Remus spoke about was with regards to the Independence Day celebrations. And this was a point I wanted to follow up on this point because it's a good point he made. And there are a couple articles from earlier on in the week with regards to the money being spent. Apparently it was private donations. Private donations. That's nice. And the caller from Rio wanted it to be audited. Because the fact of the matter is, yes, it is kind of weird that, private donations will come just to do a party, a celebration. Now, granted, I'm the guy that complains we don't practice patriotism enough. But I do wonder to what extent this was financiers wanting to support their party as opposed to wanting independent celebrations. I'm just saying. These are questions that are relevant. One thing to note, the ship, the tug that was towing the vessel that was at the center of the oil spill situation, that ship has apparently been lost. That is to say, it has left Angola. It broke free from custody in Angola. I don't know how does that happen without someone taking a blind eye. Maybe it is, or maybe someone just didn't. I don't know. Anyway, That vessel has apparently escaped, so now the hopes of trying to hold someone responsible for that oil spill has been significantly reduced. And I'll leave that there. There are a couple other minor things, but they're early from the week and don't necessarily need to get into those things. Keep an eye out on tourism, folks. I don't expect much, to be honest, but who knows, maybe in the new budget, we'll see some improvement. But the confidence in the sector right now, I do wonder if it is, whoever has confidence in the sector right now, if to some extent that might be misplaced. But that's from my perspective. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation with our usual guest here on Fridays. Stay tuned. This is Talking About on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
KDM Health Limited says, test yourself for STDs in the privacy of your own home. Our self-help test kits for all STDs are available at our wholesale office in Chaguanas. Call 283-1423, visit our website at www.kdmhealtht.com or email us at kdmhealthlimited@gmail.com to place your orders. Available at all health institutions and pharmacies. Contact us for a free list of products and prices.
Feeling drained? Struggling to keep up? It's time to take control of your wellness. On this episode of Wellness Unlocked, we're diving into the key nutrients your body needs for all-day energy and balance. With 100% or more of your daily essential vitamins, plus added chromium to support healthy blood sugar, this is complete wellness in a single soft gel. Join us as we uncover how small changes can make a big impact on your health. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
Advanced Solutions Technical Institute isn't just about courses, it's about creating futures. We serve every learner, from the new graduate to the seasoned professional, with engaging, supportive staff and tailored learning plans. Study in the way that works for you and gain skills in business, security, finance, telecoms, fiber optics, and beyond. ASTI, training tomorrow's leaders today.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide, Center City Mall Chaguanas and Movietown Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
And we're back here, show Michael Small, along with pre-retired Inspector Ashraf Ali. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Sean. And how was your day?
Well, it's last week of the vacation period. You know, I'm mourning the low traffic numbers. Yeah. Because September is like, in my opinion, the worst traffic month. It's the worst traffic month. Everybody comes out, and it's almost like if everybody has forgotten, hey, I don't know what time to leave my house and not run into traffic. So we all run into traffic at the same time almost, right? True. But couple of things to get through. There's some interesting, I don't know what it is with regards to national security topics from the year, because outside of the murder rate, I'm sure things were not this excited even in the last 5 years outside the pandemic. But with that said, let's kick off today's daily review. All right, while we have a situation where the United States might be using military assets to strike what is traditionally seen as criminal targets, although there is some gray area where you could label these transnational organizations as terrorists depending on the threats to nation states that they pose, the actual practical threats. Locally, our Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, he is now basically saying, Ashraf, it is no longer a fight against crime, it is a war against crime. And that actually makes me a little concerned, because there have been analysis with regards to the American war on drugs and how that didn't really work very well. In part, I think, because you call it a war and you kind of act like if it's a war, but you're still within the law enforcement framework, and you kind of get this odd mix of things that don't really work effectively.
So in my opinion, the narrative sounds nice. A lot of persons use a narrative, the war on crime, all hands on deck. But what does it really mean? You can't say, when you use the word war signifies or has historically been met with a certain degree of force, certain degree of resources put into place with it. Certain leeways are given when somebody, when you indicate that you have a war. So using the word very loosely, based on the situation that is presenting itself right now with the United States saying it's a war on drugs. A war on drugs, war on crime, it's similar in the same context. However, are we in Trinidad and Tobago treating it as a war on crime, as opposed to how the United States is saying it's a war on drugs? They step up the game. They took the step further. They are willing to make those hard decisions.
Well, I wanted to get into that because one of the things I found interesting, we have comments from locals. They don't want this to happen. You know, this is a peaceful region. But at the same time, they want the police to take the gloves off. They want the regiment to help the police, which is a military arm.
So that means we're going to get into the war on crime.
Right? And then, as you said, one of the things with traditionally the war on drugs from the 80s and 90s, you saw higher degree in the use of force, more resources put in, higher amount of aggression with regards to the action, and stricter consequences, harsher penalties, right?
Yes.
All of these things essentially are taking the gloves off. Now, am I wrong to say, hey, What the United States is doing is technically just taking this philosophy and going further with it. It's not straying against that path. It's along that path. It might be more extreme, but this is what it looks like. And if you don't like what it looks like at the extremes, then maybe you should kind of start to think, hey, maybe we shouldn't start to go down that path either.
And so when we use words loosely in the context of what is taking place, we have to understand how it impacts the public and the public's perception of what we're doing. Are we really in a situation where we have a war on crime? If I want to use that word right now, are we literally having a war on crime? If we are expected to have a war on crime, then I would have expected a certain environment created in Trinidad and Tobago. When we have a state of emergency, where we're in a state of emergency in an event, where certain type of criminal activities should not have been able to be perpetrated. But it is still happening. So are we really having a war on crime or just something nice?
Well, one of the other things that he said, this was the minister in an interview with the Newsday, so I believe this is an exclusive interview that the Newsday had. You can check out the full article there. It is a couple of days old. He said key players will return essentially, and then for a technology-driven approach. Now, the first part of that, the key players, the article speculates, what about Gary Griffin? I think they asked him about Gary, and he kind of gave like an open-ended answer, but not necessarily one that is committed. He said the government is open, so he's not closing the door, but he isn't saying, yes, we've reached out. Now, this is a war, right? And I think you more or less implied it with one of your opening statements on what that could mean. All hands on deck. One of the things that I kind of doubt, if this really is a war on crime, why does it feel as though there's still the political dimension and political motivations being played out? Because do you want to try to get Gary to work with you or not? Now, if you believe he's not actually good on national security, that's different. There are people who do. You should at least say that. What about the opposition? Because they had the crime talks that never happened, and I felt as though both sides were playing politics as opposed to making a genuine effort. So now that we have a war on crime, are we still going to have politics as usual while there's a war going on?
And that is why I keep on saying that we really don't understand what we are doing to our own selves. After 63 years of independence, we are still spinning. We're still spinning, trying to figure out what really, how we want to go forward. Yes, we have an issue with crime. Fortunately for us, at this point in time, we have one of the lowest murder rates for the last 10 years, statistically speaking, for last month. Even the projected, the current murder rate for the year, this year, is significantly low. Right? Are we going to be satisfied with that and say, well, hey, 2025, at the end of 2025, we had 200 homicides less, and we did significantly well. However, we had 300 home invasions. We had this amount of road traffic accidents. We had this amount of robberies that wasn't homicide. Is it that we're going to see that because the murder rate alone fall, we're in a position? Drugs are still coming in the country. Firearms are still coming in. It's still the preferred choice of weapons. Robberies are still taking place. Home invasions are still happening. We still have the issue of kidnappings. Yes, they are treating with some of the criminal elements under the state of emergency with the extended powers, but the extended powers cannot go beyond a certain period.
Hold that thought on the home invasions. I want to get back to that in a bit.
Yeah.
But the technology-driven approach, one of my things is I'm concerned. Now, we did meet with a foreign firm, and I do have hope that there will be some technological solutions. But at the end of the day, that's not going to solve everything.
The technology is only as good as the implementation and the users. I could give you all the technology. I could give you this computer. If you don't know what to do with it, what are you going to do with it?
There you go.
Right? And this is what we talk in technology, but we're not enhancing the abilities of the technology. Right? And to use it in law enforcement. We have legislation that telling us that we cannot use certain type of video footage, certain type of evidence to bring evidence before the courts. That has to change. right? We have a CCTV network system in Trinidad and Tobago that at this point in time, could you say that we have any footage showing sometimes where activity taking place? Majority of the footage that we see come on social media from private citizens and their CCTV footage. Where's our national CCTV network to substantiate that we have proper coverage? Because on the previous administration said we invested in a lot in the CCTV.
Well, what about just digitizing police vehicles so that you could have access to records and a whole host of other possible functionalities?
We have people complaining about traffic violations and indiscriminate driving on the streets. However, you still don't have number of police officers in those vehicles able to issue tickets to deter individuals from continuing. Because what? How many officers? You're not getting. The only time you hear tickets are being issued is when you have structured road checks.
Now, the opposition leader, she also called for unity to deal with the crime situation. I think this was even before the minister made his statements, or around the same time. Although again, she says she's indicated her willingness to work with government, but when they had the crime talks, both sides indicated their willingness to have crime talks, and yet somehow, and this always frustrates me, everybody says, we need to fix a thing, we're willing to fix it, but yet it can never get off the ground. And I've seen that just in my personal life and in various organizations I'm with, and now you've seen it far too often with the government. She said the state of emergency alone is not enough to deal with crime.
And I agree. It's one tool being utilized at this point in time specifically based on a particular threat. If you have that threat should not exist in the long term. It should be nipped in the bud if you're utilizing this strategic plan to treat with it. Post state of emergency, where are we going with it? What are we going to do? Moving individuals or isolating individuals from the prison system, because we also have a number of persons who are in the remand system that have not had their day in the court for it to be adjudicated innocent or guilty. We have put persons in the remand yard, and this is not from me alone. We have persons who work in this area. You have prison services, and a lot of other experts have indicated that when persons go into that environment, they come out better criminals and more knowledgeable criminals than when they than when they started before. So so technically what we're doing, we put in a school for criminals?
Well, not just, well, first of all, prison tends to be that, right?
Exactly.
Right, just across the board. But then also there's reports where, well, they're not convicted, so they have certain rights. Well, if you're in remand, how much rights are you really supposed to have? Because, again, we've reached the point where it seems as though the prison service is under threat if they don't allow certain food to come in, if they don't allow certain privileges to be granted, like TV access in cells. And of course, the cell phone usage is supposed to be against the rules, but that has gone unabated. We don't necessarily know what the security breach at Tetron was, just that is it a prison driver or prison superintendent was found accessing material he should not have accessed. They didn't explain.
It is, and saying that we have a war on crime is literally, we literally have a war on crime, because when you look at the number of homicides in the last 2 or 3 years previously, the number of victims, innocent individuals, and gang-related incidents, it's a war. It's a war on crime. It's a war on crime because this is a urban war. It's not a war that we're talking about, a military type war, right? But it's an urban war. It's an internal war that we are fighting with, sometimes with our own citizens, as well as other parties from other countries. And if people want to put their head in the sand and don't believe that the introduction of the Venezuelan migrants is not going to affect our crime dynamics, right? Because there's a difference in the way that they react to certain situations. It becomes on their culture and all of that. right? Their level of aggression in certain aspects of it. It is going to influence how our crime landscape takes place. Do we want that influence again? No. But we have to accept that is not every single Venezuelan migrant or immigrant from another country comes in Trinidad and Tobago is a criminal. There are persons who are here legitimately. Unfortunately, some of them migrate to other countries to better themselves because they have family to take care of. So they would come here to, like everybody else, like Trinidadians, going all about the place. But we have to acknowledge that it is a real risk and a real threat that we are facing.
Now, one thing I want to get to, I want to start segueing, but before I get into the situation with the schools, there was a situation where a prison officer who happened to have, I believe, an FUL, intervened in a crime and shot the criminals. The victim was wounded, but I believe survived. This caused the Prison Association president to say, arm all off-duty prison officers. To some extent, that seems like an oversimplification correlation. Well, you see, our guy stopped the crime, but it's like you can't really justify arming prison officers just because one is Johnny on the spot.
And this is where you have to have a balance. Who is the premier law enforcement agency in Trinidad and Tobago? Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Yes. Is all the Trinidad and Tobago police officers armed? If you want to use that analogy. The prison
with FULs.
With FULs.
Right. When they're off duty.
Right, when they're off duty. Even on duty, not all of them are armed.
Oh, yeah, right,
okay?
Exactly.
My question is that, and this is not a takeaway from what any individual is saying, but if you are saying, if we are trying to use that as an example or a narrative, why persons are to be armed, we're going to have problems. Because he made a choice, and he made a choice because he was armed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If he did not have a weapon on him, would he have intervened? I don't know. But he had a weapon. So that does not mean every one of them will intervene in a situation.
Yeah.
This is where this is where we have the conversation where even the opposition always wants to have conversation with really stand your ground legislation. And I am simply saying that you don't want to have conversation with stand your ground. You're talking about working together on crime.
There you go.
Right?
Yes, that's a good point.
Right?
Well, in that they didn't have consultations in PNM areas, right? You brought this up, I believe, last week.
But I listened to a statement by Marvin Gonzalez, who made a very startling statement that in the conversation and in these meetings, the UNC had people paid, right? People were paid to come and make give examples why and present themselves as supporters of it. We really serious?
Now the problem is it's not completely outside the realm of probability. However, right, but that probability is based on analyzing to some extent rumor.
But and as I'm saying, yeah. so you can't. Those are those are statements that it shouldn't be, because what you are saying to some of these citizens, even if that individual went through a traumatic incident and was presenting a reason why I should or not, you are saying that whatever you go through, you're lying.
Right, because to some extent now, the argument that, oh, they ought to be paid, that could undermine the consultations, right? It could undermine the veracity of the examples. Even if the examples are true, it still looks like it's disingenuous.
So when we say we want to work together on this on dealing with crime, you can't say you want to work together on dealing with crime and make statements of that nature on both sides of it, on both sides of it, because when the UNC was was in opposition, they also made statements on that side. Are we really saying that we want to have are we having the best interests of Trinidad and Tobago, or are we just looking for political gains?
This is why, right, it's almost like if we want to win the debate, we don't actually want to make practical statements, right? We're talking more to the base, and we're actually talking to the people who we're supposed to be talking to first and foremost. Right? Or at the very least, if you want to talk to the society, then have statements that are responsible to all the society. Now, the whole thing about arming prison officers leads to the next topic. We're going to switch topics to the second topic in the review. With regards to, let me just make sure that I am on the ball here. I believe this is with regards to the police in the schools. Now, it started off with stakeholders pointing out concerns about having police in high-risk schools, right? And I think it started off with, well, if you have police in these schools, now all of a sudden you will see because the police are present, they can't ignore everything. You know, like when the police aren't there and somebody does something, if it's a minor infraction, the school might say, well, all right, we're not going to call the police. We're just going to deal with this, whatever, depending. But once the police are there, now things are a bit more rigid. Depending, the police might actually have to intervene with whatever it is they witness. And they're concerns by, I believe it is the Principals Association and Tutor, I won't go into the various names, that you will see an uptick now of incidents because now the police will be there and will have to deal with them directly as opposed to the school being the one starting off to deal with them. Is there any concerns about that? Because to some extent that will actually make it a more heavy-handed approach for the minors who, you know, might do whatever.
So I'm not speaking on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I was speaking on behalf of on my experience. Even if you put police officers in schools, there's a limited amount of interaction that they can get involved with because under the Ministry of Education Act, the principal has the authority and the jurisdiction within the school. Police officers cannot or should not be engaged in policing in the school if it is not in line with what the Ministry of Education and the policies of the schools. Yes, we have high-risk schools. We have high-risk schools where certain things are taking place in the school, and we want to deal with it. So let's piggyback let's go back to some of the incidents that we have where we had fights in schools.
Yeah.
When you have fights in schools, the first person supposed to engage in alleviating the fight in schools would have been the management of the school, the principals, the teachers. They're supposed to. That is their domain. The security, whatever else, might intervene. If it reaches a stage, or it is reaching a stage, or it has, based on the situation that's taking place in the school, they would have engaged the police to get involved. The police would have come in. Those officers who would have been coming there armed, not stationed in the school, but coming armed.
Right.
And they may not be coming with a pepper spray, or they may be coming with their normal, with the firearm, that the tools of trade that they are constantly working with, and have to engage those students in that situation. That situation, over the years, has caused some level of unease and some conflicts with respect to that.
But not just that, generally speaking, using police in schools is kind of like using military with crime. You're escalating the response, and a heavy-handed approach with minors. It might have a similar effect to prisons, a place where you learn how to be a criminal. Well, if the system is going to treat you with a heavy-handed approach, you are potentially going to not want to continue to work with the system because you feel like you're being victimized.
You know, right. So the question is that nobody's asking the question, what went on with the school safety security program? With school safety officers in school, what went on in that program?
Well,
there was in fact school safety officers assigned to almost all schools.
Dare I say that similar to how I believe, and I assume to some extent you believe, there are legislative gaps in criminal justice that hamstring the police service, I also do wonder if there are legislative gaps and policy gaps. Because I know for one instance, there was one student who was like suspended way over what was supposed to be the limit, because after I think 6 suspensions is expulsion. But essentially, there was a gap the Ministry of Education and the schools kind of realize, look, if we just go by the book, we're not necessarily solving the problem. But if we don't go by the book, we're exacerbating the problem. So we're in a catch-22 where we don't have a proper remedy. That's why we're going to the police,
so
right? I do wonder if that's you rock on a hard place. Because we haven't actually gotten a proper strategy, this is a Band-Aid we want to slap on because we don't know what else to do. Because to intervene in a school fight, it goes back to the teacher who, they have female students beating another female student. You gonna swing as a male teacher? You can't.
This is where we may have some potential challenges as the program roll out. When the program roll out, the gaps will appear. The issues surrounding the presence of the police officers in schools, you will have instances or incidents that we will have to address. So I don't want to predict any situation, but I am saying, looking foresight, they will have challenges you're going to face. How we address those challenges, I will wait to see how it is addressed later down. But if I could give if I give a possible example of it, is this: if a child assaults the police officer, that's an assault. If every incident, or 5 out of 6 incidents, or 5 out of 10 incidents where the police engages or tries to bring it or address a conflict in school with a child leads to an assault, is the police officer going to, or is it the assault going to be allowed, and allowing the child to assault not a teacher anymore, but a police officer who's representing the state? That police officer is representing no school anymore, you know. That police officer is representing law enforcement. That is an arm of the state. And if you in the school could challenge the arm of the state in a school environment, what stops you from challenging the arm of the state when you come outside? So there were reports that the police would be armed. Then there were reports that, that kind of tried to backtrack that, right? Initially, the Minister of Education said they would be armed, and then I think the post-cabinet briefing, they said, and then Minister Alexander said non-lethal. Non-lethal. Right? Now, there's two sides to this. You've pointed out the one side where police coming in armed with guns, right? And of course now, that's a very, it'll make people uncomfortable. You know, what if something goes wrong with the gun in the environment? So even with in the context of non-lethal weapons, the non-lethals that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is authorized to utilize to carry are pepper spray and tasers. Right. And tasers. Yeah. You cannot or should not tase a minor. You have some. And if that should happen, we have more problems to answer. Right. More issues to address. So ironically, if all they had were guns, it would be very clear, oh, there's a school fight, we can't draw a gun. But if they have tasers and pepper spray, and the students might be acting wild or whatever, wild enough, there's a chance that a police officer might be so tempted to utilize pepper spray. And all I am saying at this point in time, take away the lethal weapons. I am comfortable with taking away the lethal weapon because the risk of the lethal weapon is too high. So there's a flip side to that, right? And depending on the level of activity by criminal gangs, which may be reduced because they have other pressing concerns given the current circumstances, but you know, before state of emergencies and U.S. Venezuela and stuff like that, we knew that the criminal gangs were recruiting heavily in the schools, right? And at times we have seen situations where when there are fights outside of a school, I think the last one was a video where you saw students from different schools technically outside. So that is with adults monitoring. So that is what I'm saying. We have just gone from two areas. The school environment, the school compound within the precincts of the school, those officers should be there. When you come out on the public space, all the all the safeguards you have under the Ministry of Education in that school environment, a learning institution, that child does not have that.
But this is the point I was trying to make. There have been at times parents get too aggressive. Adults that are not staff get involved. And we know that there's a criminal element that is recruiting. If we have unarmed police now, I just fear an incident will happen with an armed criminal. And then people will say, well, why the police didn't have their guns to deal with the threat?
And I am simply saying, if that incident should occur, we may have to, it will be addressed.
Then?
It will be addressed then. But for now, the risk associated with the aesthetics of bringing a law enforcement officer in the school environment, based, because, and I don't know if these individuals will be dressed in uniform or otherwise. What is their dress code for the school environment? It's a different conversation altogether. When they are there, we'll have to get our understanding of what would be their role and responsibility within the school environment. I will leave that for the ministry, together with the PTAs and the relevant authorities, to indicate to the general public as to what would be their role and function with respect to that, because we have not understood as yet what is their role and function. We know that they will be given a certain degree of training to engage with children and understanding that dealing with minors and how to address with minors.
So also, like, for lack of a better way to put it, what are the rules of engagement, when they could intervene, how they could intervene?
So those things I am saying, I will wait to even make any pronouncements on it, because I am curious to see how it's going to work out in the best interest of both parties. But for now, I don't see the need, based on the circumstance, to put an armed officer in the school.
Okay.
Even if we are putting an officer in school with a non-lethal weapon, which is a taser and the pepper spray, there is still a risk associated with discharging of those two items, because the TTPS has a use of force policy with even those two non-lethals, how to use it and when to use it.
That's why officially now organizations started calling them less lethal, not non-lethal, because there's still risk of injury.
There's still a risk of injury. So we will have to see how it transitions as the new term opens. But there's a lot of conversation, and I understand there's a lot of concern and a lot of gray areas and questions to be asked whether or not how it is going to work.
All right. I want to take a break. When we come back, I have a question I want to pose with you with, and I mentioned this yesterday, consequences that I don't think a lot of people will be on their radar. I want to run it past you so you could say what you think about it. But we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears back to the main topic of the week, all the excitement and drama that we might be caught in the middle. Who knows? Stay tuned. This is Talking About the Essential Michael Small, Ashraf Ali. We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call
at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.